So good morning, dear guests, dear colleagues. As Dean of the Department of Law of the University of Ferrara and as member of the board of the Center for European Legal Studies on Macrocrime, it's a great pleasure to give you my warmest welcome at our university. It's a particularly welcome opportunity. This is indeed one of the first scientific events organized within the newborn center set up by the Department of Law in the framework of the project Dipartimenti di Eccellenza. This is the project funded by the Italian Ministry of University and Research starting from 2017-2018, gives financial support to the departments of the Italian universities which stand out for the quality of their research activities. The Department of Law of the University of Ferrara was ranked first in the selection for its field of scientific research. Today's conference is also the official inauguration of the public activities of the center, and I'm very glad to see such a big participation. It's not by chance that the event is dedicated to one of the most important international instruments for the prevention and repression of transnational organized crime, the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, so-called Palermo Convention, in the 15th anniversary of its entry into force. Today's session represents the sequel of the meeting held in Milan last week, which was specifically dedicated to the study of the engagement of Italy against the mafias and its contribution to the new international trend in criminal policy. Today, we will be moving towards a more international perspective, focusing on the institutional structure of the Palermo Convention, also analyzing the interaction between the Palermo Convention and other multilateral instruments relating to the fight against organized crime. We will also not forget the national level, considering the domestic implementation of the Palermo Convention and its supplementing protocols. Some of the most prominent scholars and experts in the subject will present their conclusions during the meeting, and I will not steal more time to the discussion of the colleagues, which I'm sure will be extremely interesting and inspiring. Last but not least, I would just like to give a special thank you to Professor Serena Forlati, Director of the Center for European Legal Studies on Macrocrime, for the organization of the conference, and also to the Osservatorio sulla criminalità organizzata, CROSS, and the Department for International, Legal, and Historical Political Studies of the University of Milan for their support and participation in the initiative. Thank you all and welcome again at our department. So, good work.
Thank you, Daniele. Thank you all for being here and having accepted our invitation to reflect with us on the Palermo Convention. As the director of our department has said, this is the first scientific event organized in the framework of our new center. The center, of course, focuses on different forms of high-impact crime. But we have been working at a smaller dimension for a number of years on the topics related to the fight against organized crime in different manifestations. And one of the clusters of the work of the center still focuses on this specific aspect. And it is in the framework of this cluster, which I coordinate together with my colleague Orsetta Giolo, who is sitting there in the front rows, that we have taken up the idea of working again on the Palermo Convention, which has already been in focus of part of our research activities in the past. As Daniele Negri has just said, we decided to work on this specific event together with the Milan Observatory on Organized Crime, specifically with Nando dalla Chiesa, Monica Massari, who's here, and Cristian Ponti, who is really the person with whom I actually built the program of the two-day conference. Unfortunately, Christian cannot be here today for very serious personal reasons. He is very sorry about his absence and has asked me to extend to all of you his thanks and his warm greetings, even from far away. The absence of Christian is actually not the only last-minute change in the program that we've had. Some changes we could reflect in the program. Some others could not be taken notice of in the program. For instance, we have a replacement. Levent Altan could not be here, but his colleague of Victim Support Europe, Ruth Schrimpling, has kindly accepted to replace him. Thank you very much, Ruth. We will also have another absence this morning. Leonardo Borlini cannot be here as a discussant for the first panel. This means that the first panel will be slightly less crowded than envisaged, and this will leave us more space for discussion. The other panels are actually quite dense still. My idea is to have relatively short presentations, really on the bulk, on the thrust of each participants' main arguments, and that we maybe can discuss the details in the discussion afterwards for the aspect that spark more interest. And maybe, this is a question that I put to all of you, we could consider delving in more depth with these different topics in a publication later on. But this is something that I leave to your reflection, and let's think about it and maybe discuss over the day what options we have in this regard. I would certainly like to not to let this kind of meeting drop, also because the meeting involves people with very different expertise, very different backgrounds. My idea was, behind this choice, was that the convention is really a rather special instrument in many different respects, not only because of the high participation rate, it's one of the most widely ratified instruments at international level, but also because of the broad range of crimes it covers and of the fact that it has become of relevance not only in the area of the fight against crime and international penal matters, but also for a range of areas of international law that have, in principle, little to do with cooperation in criminal matters. And this depends, I think, on a number of factors, not only the flexibility in terms of the scope of the crimes covered, but also the approach it takes, the comprehensive approach to the fight against crime that the Convention takes, and possibly also other elements as well, the complexity, the supplementing protocols that add layers to the parent convention, and so on. So my idea was also to have not only experts who devote their professional life, both in academia and in practice, to the convention specifically, but also scholars who work in, and practitioners who work in different areas. So also to have so to speak, an external eye on the convention. I think this will gain us some insight as to the real meaning of the convention in today's international society, and of course also at domestic level. Looking at the way in which states implement the convention is critical to assessing its effectiveness. We thought that 15 years of implementation could be a good time frame to begin drawing a balance in this respect. Of course, the anniversary is passed since over 6 months, but I hope this will not detract to the interest of this kind of exercise today. I don't want to take too much time. Nando dalla Chiesa is late, his train is late, so will not give his greetings on the behalf of the observatory, but I hope he will take up the floor later on today, also in this respect. Just a few practical indications before we actually begin with the scientific part of the conference. First of all, as you can see, we are being video recorded. We will hand out, a consent form later on. But should any of you have difficulties and prefer not to be recorded during their presentations, please just let us know, and we will, of course, omit either the recording or at least the publication of the recording later on. Secondly, we have only these mics, so speakers will have to speak from here, and those who wish to raise questions or make comments in the discussion can just do it from their place, but without a mic. And questions can be accepted also in Italian if any of those present in the public, anybody does not feel like speaking in English. Just as a last note, I would like to warmly thank the staff that has helped me in the organization of the conference, very especially Ilaria Quironi, without whom we could not have been here today, all of us, but also some PhD students who very kindly accepted to support us in the last phases of the preparations. Damiano Censi, Chiara Cuttitta, Giulia Ducoli, and Anna Francesca Masero, thank you very much for your help.